starting out with the overall perspective, then we'll dive into the details. In our production plan, we have the bidding and buyout, and it looks like that will all happen May 7th to like June 17th. This is deferred submittals, and then this is actually the trade partner preparation process. This is where we do pre-mobilization meeting, pre-con meetings, the like. These are just some timelines like trailer, temp power, things like that. And then we have our site work, structure, exterior, and interiors. This just kind of gives you an overview. That way, when I hop into the actual production plan, it will make sense. So I'm just going to slowly scroll down and say, this is pretty normal. We have our permitting, trade partner preparation process, our submittals, deferred submittals, and then timelines. And so I just want to come right on down here and just show you high level the overall strategy. We don't have to, the sequences have been pretty well vetted. So strategy number one is start on the site. The idea would be to get to building one certified pad as fast as we can. Right now, we're wanting to target with our trades to see if we can get there by July 17th and at least start on building pad one. And then basically what happens is building two, building three, building four would come online behind utilities. And I want to note a couple things here. One thing is Jeff brought up an awesome comment, which is we might want to put the clubhouse in here as building 1, 2, or 3. The other thing to note is we did find out recently that we would have to have the fire line near the buildings before we start framing. So this fire line activity, as we're showing it here, would definitely have to be coordinated before we start the actual framing. So that is something that we're looking at right there.
Jason, just on the fire line looks like it's going in sequence with the sewer. That may be a challenge for you because they're probably at two different depths.
So fire line in with the sewer.
Yeah, right there.
So water line and fire line, these are going together. Sewer line is here, but I do see your point. Like we need to coordinate fire and sewer. So talk about whatever you want, Tony, but I think what I'm getting from you is let's go ahead and do some cut sections and analyze this sequence with the depths. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just right there on July 1st, you've got the sewer stacked with the green, the third line there. The green, I think, is a fire line something.
I see. Okay, perfect.
Right there. Perfect.
Kiyoshi, will you highlight this and mark it in our production plan and make a note?
Yes, I will do.
Okay, perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for, team. And then high level, right now we do have the show suites here, but to my knowledge, the city releases all of phase one before mobilization. So Kiyoshi, correct me if I'm wrong, but as of right now, I don't think they let us mobilize in the sales team until the whole building has certificate of occupancy. Is that right, Kiyoshi, or no?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we can continue to do some research, but to our knowledge, the whole phase one has to be signed off. Then you move in your sales team and you start moving people in. But we can definitely bring that up as an item.
So one of the things, like Langford City Gate's the same. They don't allow sales centers in the county or in the city, the municipality. So we've worked with the inspector on site to create essentially PPE free zones, and they get orientation and they get visitor orientation, and they're either chaperoned or they get a full orientation and have first aid coverage and all that stuff to get the sales ahead of time. So that may be an avenue that we can use down there as well.
I like that.
When we're talking show suites, when it comes to the locations of them and depending on which building the show suites are in, ideally the show suites are in the first building you start construction with. So we've had some discussions of sequencing there too. So ideally the first building that you would start with is the one that's closest to Fillmore, and you could have access right off of the backside and avoid having people tramping all the way through the construction site to the building. And one more thing is, and this ties into your earlier comment about the whole clubhouse sequencing. Ideally, we'd want the clubhouse first, and the leasing team leases and operates out of that building. Okay. And so there's no one actually working in the show suites. It's just they take people in to show it and they leave. So from an occupancy standpoint, if you're talking to the city of Buckeye about what the intent there of the show suites are, right? It's not, people aren't staying there. People aren't working in there. They're not living in there.
Okay.
It's purely guiding them through a very live show suite to rent, right? So just for context.
I like that. And let me just show you this on the logistics maps. This was the original like mobilization, how we want to get there to start. This would be the safety and signage. This is our temp water plan, temp power plan, and then our 3-month like where we want to go to start, and then our trailer. So what Jeff is saying right now, to my knowledge, is that, and Scott said the same thing, that show suites would be better done down here, and the leasing office would be inside the clubhouse, right? I think those are great ideas. What I think it would look like here is we would probably, from a concrete and like major trade standpoint, we could hop in here and either do the clubhouse first and then hop into these buildings. The problem with that would be that the clubhouse has more coordination, more steel, which are long lead, and it might provide some bottlenecks ahead of the sequence. But it still remains that it is a good idea. Where we're at now is, when I didn't know about the inspector thing, was, hey, building 1 would be the nice place to start because we can access it logistically from 2 sides while we're doing the bulk of these utilities, and the utilities aren't in the way, and the utilities would basically kind of dance around us while we're coming behind with building. So that's what we have now, but that doesn't mean that that's right. And then when Jeff and I talked recently, one of Jeff's thoughts was, you could move this building down here to building 1, and basically all we would have to do is access it from the road, meaning our logistics and like building the structure and the pumps, which probably wouldn't be a big deal because this isn't like a used road, so we could actually use like half of it until these improvements were done. So that does seem possible. And then like once folks are in a production sequence, we would go to this building, and then I hope it doesn't sound silly, but any key trades would pop over here to the clubhouse, and we would finish up with this one over here to the left. The problem with that would be if we lost any synchrony with some of the trades in between here. And then let me just give you another option that you all can consider, is that we start here with this being building number 1, 2, 3, which solves our utility problem, meaning that we have good flow, meaning that we're working around while utilities are working out. And this is kind of like, if this is building 1, 2, 3, the clubhouse is kind of concurrent work, and we find a way to weave that in together, which I think is possible as well. So tell me what you would recommend. Go ahead.
One thing that you didn't allude to is when we were having that discussion, you had mentioned we have all that offsite work and the timing of that, and when that has to go, right? There's a whole chunk of work that happens in Fillmore, which right now is slated to start after we start on site, and that might delay the start of that work till we can get out of that way of that.
Yeah.
If we're doing that first building first, right? So
yeah,
there's challenges all the way around.
There are challenges, but I'll tell you, I think we found a way to accomplish either one. Any of your notes we'll note down, but my preference would be, my ideal would be that the show suites are like right here. And Jeff had a good point. There would be a fence here. It wouldn't be super pretty, but you would come over here, you would look at these, and you would have to hard hat safety vest over here. I think the show suites here would be better for what Tony's saying. We could have a PPE free zone, but you would definitely have a fence here to look at. But this would be my preference. And what we would do is we would probably do building 1, 2, 3, and we would run this concurrent to have it be done as early as possible and meet all of our goals. And that would allow this civil work to be working in this direction and moving out of our way while we were able to access building 1 up here from the top. So yeah, just give us your thoughts. We're open to all of it.
One thing that we've found is it tends to work out really well if you can get the community building in ahead of kind of everything else, because it allows the finished crews to flow from the community building into the show suites, and then they can complete the show suites while they're completing the community building, and they go away for a while and then come back to do their regular production work. So it doesn't matter to me in any way, shape, or form whether it goes before or after, really, as long as the show suites are available early enough for tendering. The way that we've been able to solve that is just by doing the community building first. You could do it concurrently and probably get the same flow. Yeah,
I like what you're saying. So you would basically be like, they would come in clubhouse, they move right into the show suites wherever they end up being, and then you hit everybody off on a nice rhythm and you run them through the buildings.
Yeah, and those show suites become your, quality standard, your mock-up essentially for everything moving forward. So, and it's done, arguably generally a month or two before they actually get to the main production piece.
The only thing that doesn't work to start the soonest would be this building over here. I could see, and Jeff's right. So I think probably where we're going to land based on what you just said, and you all tell me if you like it or not, probably we'll keep the show suites right here and look at our sequence to come into the community building, first mock-up right here, jam out, and then start to move in this direction. And the only reason we would have to do it like this is because of concrete and early utilities. And the only thing that would mean would be that we have to sequence this properly, which we're lean tact we can do, and we would have to access this during slab on grade from the southern portion, which I still, as long as we don't inhibit the offsite work, we're good. So let me make those two notes: confirm not, and then confirm sequence. All right, so good. Are we good with that, team?
Just a quick note, Jason, and I haven't been involved very much, so I might not be helpful, but you have a lot of servicing to do on the site. So if you got the servicing at the community building done, you could get started on that. And I don't know if the permits are going to work with that or not, but you can get well ahead on that while you're doing all the servicing on site. Usually that's 2 or 3 months. I'm not sure what it is there, but.
So you said everything right. I don't know what do you mean by servicing? I think it may just be my terminology.
All the underground. So the deeps and the shallows, the sewers, the water lines.
Yes.
Power, all that. The community building could be going in at that time, right?
Yes, correct. 100%. And that, to your point, I love it. This is going first, and this is second. We access this from the south. That gives us time to get all of this stuff in here, up here, jamming. With the fire hydrant thing, if we have any difficulty getting the fire hydrants in, there is a hydrant here close to these two buildings. So it buys us more time for the wood framing for the city of Buckeye. So that's great.
So I'm just going to say, the sequencing works. One thing we'll have to be cognizant of is, I was going to say unfortunately, but I'm going to be positive. We have, in front of these two buildings, we have the least amount of parking, surface parking.
Okay.
Like if we're going to do the building in front of, adjacent to West Fillmore, we're going to have to make sure that we have enough surface parking to accommodate that building on when it opens, and if we move into, we could be okay, but we'll need it all to the end of that one building, right? And we move to the second building, it has very little parking, so we'll need a lot of the parking on the west end of that building, the one in the middle.
Yep, right here.
Yeah, that one. So
Yep.
that all that parking to the west of that will have to be open.
Okay.
When those two come online, we'll need parking. So
Okay, perfect. Man, this Fresh Eyes meeting is already top notch because these are so helpful. So
What about that parking lot to the right of the clubhouse? The turquoise one right there. What about that?
I think that's trade parking.
Okay.
yeah, I should
Right.
mark that the different.
No, that's okay, Jason. Don't worry about it. I was just thinking of providing parking during construction without tying down the middle of that site and locking it in with people parking there and stuff.
Okay.
Just a thought. Sorry.
No, I like it. It's interesting to decide where the trailer goes because we're probably going to want to have the trailer right here so we don't ever have to move it. And then we wanted to get the temporary power SES over there as far as we can, temp power, so that this can just stay in one location. So the parking lot, basically, we would be doing our morning huddles right over here in the temp park. So basically, people would come in probably and drive up past here, parking, huddle, and then go to work is probably what we would end up doing as of now. And especially have this driving past because when we're doing the site work, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff here that we get to do for foundations, gates, the whole nine. So yeah, one thing that we can change, but I do want to mention is that we'll lose 1/4 of an inch per floor for shrinkage. By the way, I do love build it up to the top and then going top down. So I want you to know I love that. Right now, the team wants to go with a sequence of where we go floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, working up the building unless somebody sees something wrong with that. And then, go ahead.
No, I'm cheering. Great.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have, this is all the typical high street sequence. And then at the end here, I am basically like 17.5 months would be probably right here. I think we could get this done with some buffers on a 2-day tack time at like 15 and a half to 16 and a half months. And then every phase go faster and faster from there. So every trade we've already worked through the trades, all of our bottleneck trades, and confirmed a 2-day takt time would work for them. So it is kind of brave, I guess, of us, but to try on the first project, but we are on a 2-day takt time. Like I said, every timeline and all of the procurement has been mapped out. One more last thing that I'll say is for buyout, knowing that we're going out to bid on the full set, we need to make sure that we're under budget. When working with trade partners right now, it looks like the only two things that we would have a problem with would be concrete and steel. So right now we're knowing that we're on the 24th. We've got two scenarios that we'll be talking to Jeff with next week. Is for concrete, can we do an LOI and only release them to procure materials, or do we order them ourselves? And same thing for steel. Do we select a trade partner, issue an LOI and only issue a work order for materials, or do we order it ourselves? And we should have some good information by early next week on what we do. Framing, it looks like we can wait. Electrical's already been released. Civil doesn't have long lead items. And I think we're going to be pretty well set. So we've narrowed it down to 2.
How about your elevator?
No elevator.
No elevators?
Yeah. So we're not as cool as you, Chad. Sorry.
The other one that we typically do early is distribution, electrical distribution.
That's what Jason was talking about, Tony. We've got a 50% invoice to pay to get that going.
Okay, good.
Procurement of it's currently actually being reviewed. Shop drawings have already been produced and being reviewed by APS, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. And let me show you all that. So this is the timeline that Michelle and the dry utility humans have, and it is tight. So I do want to say officially in front of everybody on this call, the aggressive timeline for APS giving us permanent power barely makes it. So we are going to, Jeff, Leanville, all of us, we're just going to have to stay really vigilant on that. But when I analyzed it of whether or not we would have to like issue an LOI and do something early with the electrical, basically what I talked to the electricians about the other day is if this slides over and we are able to confirm that we're under budget, and we said, hey, electrician, can you confirm that we're releasing the right stuff? And here's where the PO is released. We have a little bit of a window there. It's not safe, but it is possible. And that's why I say it's still only concrete and steel. That basically all of the switchgear has been the shop drawings. Now they're in the review, and we would get the final sign off for our electrical pick like just before it's released. And then the window here is February 9th to February 13th. And you can see the APS timeline just hits barely here. And the good thing is our switchgear will be here between December 19th and February 9th. So the switchgear is hitting. So now APS is the longest timeline. So that's why it's so critical. Right now we're thinking if we have everything done right, that we could do this 15.5 months. If something happens that we don't see, it's 16.5, but we're going to even try to do better than that. And that would still even leave us a couple 4 weeks at the end buffer if we hit these two. So the key points to that in order for us to make it work would be the being able to get to the first building pad, which our civil folks think would be fine, being able to have post tension on time, being able to have trusses, framing, and engineering done on time. But other than that, I think we've got it.
Yeah, I mean, contextually, I think Westbrook Phase 2 generally was 21 months from, more or less when we started digging a hole in the ground to turning over the last building. Mm-hmm. Those are 4-story buildings, 80-unit buildings, yep. Arcades, obviously covered corridors. So probably, and we went bottom up and then top down. So we had that, V of wasted time and space in there. So, if you're doing 3-story, no underground parkade and 2-day takt time, you might be able to get a little bit more out of it than 15 and a half months, but you guys work through the sequence and the schedule and it's going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah. And we do realize that we're brand new and we've got to have some humility with that. And so I guess the reason this would be a pertinent conversation is like, if we have 4 weeks of buffer and we hit here, then in the budget, I think originally we had 17 and a half or 18 months in the budget for GCs, GRs. Mm-hmm. And I think after the research that we've done, this needs to come in and we need to realize we need to probably drop some of these dollars over 16 and a half months for GCs and GRs and basically use that as a way to get into the budget, get under budget. So, okay. Because I don't know that there's any reason to be feel too conservative there. These are pretty well vetted. Just so you know, most of our trades are like, we have them on a 2-day takt time doing 4 units every 2 days. Some of the trades, not all of them, are hitting 5 units every day on some of these developments. So they're not freaking out. And we've been able to take care of most of their requests through design.
Awesome.
Okay, any last call for schedule, then we'll move on to the next thing.
Jason, I just had a quick comment. You kind of answered my question. I call them the sort of the rainbow unicorn tasks that are specific. So using our templated schedule, there's a challenge of identifying those little bits of scope that don't fall into the same routine in our schedule. But it sounds like you've addressed it because you touched base on the post-tensioning cables in the slabs, and that's one of those activities that doesn't typically fall into one of our buildings or one of our schedules. So I just want to make sure that the pre-con team is identifying those golden unicorn or those rainbow unicorn items that don't fall into a typical standard schedule, and that they're accounting for those. And it sounds like you guys have.
Yeah, but I'm writing it down. So we'll do full drawing review and add details. Now, if you had made that comment a week before, you would have caught us that we need more detailing on the finished site work. And so we are going to look at those things. Just so you know, we've done a preliminary, like high level, get us out of trouble review.
Yeah.
I'll be doing a 30-minute drawing review every day for the next 3 months. And so we'll do exactly what you're saying.
It's great. Just those golden unicorns. Great idea. Good job.
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. Anything else for schedule, team?
On the durations of the foundations, take this with a grain of salt because we haven't post-tension slab before, but we still feel like it would be a lot easier than the current arcades we have to build with the suspended slab and everything. I'm not sure what our total duration is on those, but it seems here like we're like 2 months on the slab.
Yes.
Does it seem too long?
It could be. Let me look at the activities here. So it would be like a month and 3 weeks. It might be long. Slab on grade for that much space on a typical commercial building with deep underground, basically all the plumbing and everything underneath it. Typically takes about 6 to 8 weeks to do the underground, 4 to 6 weeks to do the underground, and then like 2.5 weeks to place. So, hey, let me take that comment, Jeff. I'm super fun. We're open to everything. We can actually start vetting this. We have some runners up with concrete, and I'm not trying to manipulate or lead the witness, but Jeff, if you're like, yeah, those 3 numbers so we have a concrete contractor right now that actually is under a prorated budget percentage is probably what I would say, meaning like when you all gave us our new target, if you shrink all of the budget by percentage, we have a concrete contractor right now that with an LOI would start working on all the coordination and could vet this with us. If not, and we don't have an LOI, I could probably go through the sequence with him. So
I would suspect though that once you do, for every trade that's got a component to these slabs, you'll review and tweak and have them buying into their time.
Correct.
Right? And so it'll be adjusted, but just as like a high level, like from a timing perspective, we could take the current timeline that it takes us to do our under slab and slab on grade and add maybe some time for sanitary because it's now not hanging from the arcade ceiling, it's underground as well. So there'd be more duration there, but
I love it. This
be a good starting point.
No,
I don't know like Chad or Sean, you can recall what the durations have been like on phase 2 for Westbrook.
It's not apples to apples, right? So it's hard to pick because all we have is a couple sumps and some parquet drainage. We don't have all the unit drainage.
Right, but we have an idea of what that unit drainage takes to hang, and doing it under slab is always quicker.
You know, the other thing is we have data from some other North American United States projects that have not exactly the same, but similar. And so we'll do a compare. Here's what we can do. This is actually cool. And we're going to talk the talk. We can do a reference class on the foundations.
There you go.
Reference class forecast. Yeah. This is exactly why we're here.
If it ends up being this duration, right.
All right. So that's done. And as you all know, we'll follow our normal systems and pull plan every phase before we go and try and do a really, really great job. The other thing we did is we did a week-by-week analysis of the building phasing. And when we look at the new phasing, we'll do the same thing and say, hey, where will all the wagons be? Do we have enough space? The whole nine. So this first phasing here, we will update this per the new phasing and make sure that we're good to go. So let me take you over here to just high level. If we change the zoning for the site is right now going, and actually I don't know if you need to see, like if you ever want to see the sequences in detail, but basically the site work is coming down in this direction because most of our hookups are here and here. And that actually works with the sequencing that you all mentioned. The foundations are zone 1 and 2, and you all know this from the PT, but we have a leave out, and we're going to be doing the larger side of the foundations first. And then what will happen is once these are stressed and then we do the second one, we'll be able to do this post-tension infill.
You guys are going to teach us all about post-tensioning.
Awesome.
I haven't done it. I don't know if Tony's done it or not, but I certainly haven't.
Seen it on some bridge stuff before, but never done it.
No, it's going to be a good learning experience.
Yeah, I'll show you an image here. One of the things that we have been doing from a lift drawing standpoint, our VDC group has taken every plan dimension and without using the CAD files at all, recreated all of the wall layouts and dimensions, and basically we were able to submit RFIs for missing dimensions and make sure the door swings are going in the right direction, and then also note all the hold downs and anchor bolts. And so there you can see where all the bolts go, they're everywhere, and hold downs. One of the concrete contractors is going to just do, or is going to propose to do all of the perimeter and leave the center out and to drill and epoxy it, which is scary with PT. But what they're telling me is that with other buildings in the valley, the NP engineering will basically help us get the post-tension cables spaced to where drilling and epoxying or drilling with an anchor, with a quick anchor like a Hilti anchor, would be fine later. And then they also have scanners to where we don't hit a cable. And so we've got one contractor that's basically proposing to set all of these during the placement and finish around them, and the other one to just keep this open and do what they call bump cutting and just have their finishing machine run through the center. We're tracking that down and going to go do some field walks to find out what the best way is, but that's kind of what they're looking at. And then in addition to our other lift drawings, I'm sure you already know that we've been modeling the way the framing goes together, so that instead of just looking at a wood structure and saying looks good, we can actually QC the way it's placed together and how all the hold downs and everything goes down. So all of the foundations, we're like about a month away from having complete lift drawings, and we probably had like 60 to 80 RFI questions prevented because we are giving the structural engineer all these items before we even start. So yeah, so we'll look at the sequence. We should be pretty ready to go. And then also we have all the buildings located by coordinates so that we can verify their building location with a total station. So that's pretty cool. So, and then when we get down to the units, right now we're about 4,000 square foot zone sizes on a 2-day Takt time. And the exteriors are about 2,500 square feet on the perimeter. So those are our sequences, and zoning. Okay, here's our biggest thing that we want to vet with you, and please don't make me cry on this, but just to confirm, knowing that this is our first project, what we have right here, Brad Pugh is an experienced superintendent that's worked with me, trained by me, used to work at Hensel Phelps and DPR. We have Ricardo and Eddie as field engineers, Emilio as the PM with Nico and Kiyoshi. I think I had a comment that maybe this is a little bit heavy. Let me actually get your input, but I want you to consider two things, if you don't mind. The clubhouse, the USA bureaucracy. I don't know how to, I'll just call it B. And then
Yes.
yeah. and then the offsite work. So let's talk about staff and just give us some recommendations that we can look into so we can right size it. Obviously all of this right here up top comes out of fee. These would be on-site. We will have Emilio on-site. Let's not worry about how this gets billed, but from a staff size, we would have a water truck driver / forklift, and then carpenter, and then laborer. So thoughts? I'm sure this isn't right yet, so would love your thoughts.
I don't know, it's tough because we did it without the PM, but it doesn't mean that's the only way. But we also had 2 carpenters, 2 up to 4 dynamos or laborers.
Okay.
You might have a plan to keep the trades doing a lot of it, which is fine.
Okay.
Bring it up.
So basically, one of the considerations that I'm hearing you say is it depends on amount of work with the trades. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, based on what you just presented, and I don't know, Tony can comment, but like we have site this like Brad would be this site's what we call site super, same thing there. And then field engineers, they're what we call assistant supers.
Yeah.
So that's no different. The size of the project is no different, with the exception of the complexities of the clubhouse might be a little bit more complex than ours, but I would argue that our clubhouse in Westbrook was quite complex for our little team. And then the offsites, Westbrook is a great example of complicated offsites as well.
Okay.
But it's, I think, where we need to have some more discussion, and Scott will need to be involved, and Tony, maybe if I'm wrong, is the office team. Like we would see the Emilios and the Nikos and the Kiyoshis, that's the office staff. So like equivalent to like Emilio would be, you know, equivalent to like, let's say Mike in our office here, and Nico and Kiyoshi equivalent to Virginia, and then, you know, my team or my role, not my team, and then like that's all coming out of the fee, not out of the project, right? And so I think that's where the discussion was, and the budget line for those, which can be worked out.
Okay.
I don't know, Tony, if you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously your business model is different than High Street's business model, right? So we run differently than you guys do. You can have a look at Westbrook as a good example. Like we had Chad, the assistant sites, or Chad the super, we had Tanner and Phil, the assistant site supers, we had a site coordinator, and then generally we have some combination of one or more carpenters and dynamos per building, and then an equipment operator on site. And the carpenters probably is a little bit less. Like I think at Westbrook, generally we carried 2 throughout the job. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong. But I think, you know, depending on how well your scope's written for your framers, and how well they, or how good they are at go back work, you may be able to get rid of, you know, one of those carpenters. Like the reason why we have so many is because our framer comes in, slams up the building, and then leaves. And then they don't generally send people back to do back framing and you know, fixing bowed studs and things like that. So we take that on. You know, Chad alluded to, we're probably doing more for our trades from a cleanliness perspective than what your guys' expectation will be, just based on our interactions. So maybe you need less labor. So yeah, I think it's going to be different, because I think, you know, the traditional field engineer is different than our assistant site super is. They're more, and you guys know what their role is better than I do, but they're more around the technical aspect of layout and coordination and lift drawings and that kind of stuff, less so around the day-to-day, and I could be wrong, the day-to-day trade coordination piece that may all live with Brad. So it's hard for us to comment and say it should be this, because your guys' business is different than ours. And you know, doing this for us, yeah, we could say we probably don't need a PM and you know, an office side of things, because we should have less paperwork, we should have less change orders, we should have less, you know, conflict between the groups, and we should be able to just, you know, roll together. As you guys build your business and go and work for Joe Schmo owner number 2, you may need that role. So yeah, it's really going to be up to you guys.
Okay, well then these are, I think I've got the good comments here. I see some discussion. One of the things I talked to Scott about is that I'm going to try and talk him into this being on site, even if we have to talk about other fee items. It doesn't mean it's right, but the USA model is that these folks are on site. We do have more bureaucracy. Maybe we can get rid of some of it with the design team, but we definitely probably at least need one or two of the dynamos. Probably there's some overlap, like the 2 field engineers do quite a bit of what they do except for the labor part. And then I think I'm hearing the message that, hey, if it looks different, it just has to balance, and then we have to look at it from the overall budget and then confirm it with Scott that he believes it's fair. So okay, well then I think I have some idea. I think we're lighter on the labor, we are more in with the trades, and we're a little bit more heavy on the bureaucracy, and I think I can see some strategies here to make this work. So that's great. That was more helpful than I bet you probably even realized. So there you go. All right, well team, I appreciate you. We'll see you in our final check-in, and we'll see if we can get this thing under budget. On we go.